Today I'm going to give you an introduction to the collectible card game Weiss Schwarz. So Weiss Schwarz as a card game is kind of no different from any other collectible card game, right? Like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. But the unique thing about Weiss Schwarz is that rather than it being focusing on one specific franchise alone, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, Weiss Schwarz is kind of like the Super Smash Brothers of card games where you could have all sorts of different franchises in there. It's kind of like those fan fictions you see online where people talk about, what if Goku fought Superman, who would win? Well, for all those that want to play all these franchises and see all these characters go up against each other, then your dream has come true. Because if you actually look at all the titles that are released from 2009 to current day 2022, you'll see franchises like Fate Zero, Sword Art Online, Attack on Titans, Mushoku Tensei, even Hololive now, and ReZero as well. And the list goes on and on and on, right? And I'll give you some examples as to what kind of crazy matchups you might see when you play this game. Do you want to see Iron Man and Scarlet Witch go against Mob Psycho? Well, here we go, you can. If that doesn't suit your taste, how would you like to have Fate Unlimited Blade Works and Fate Zero go up against JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Or what about playing a climax event of a naked flying tree guy from Mob Psycho going against Sasha from Attack on Titans eating a potato? Or I guess if you're really into this kind of stuff, you could have Gilgamesh from Fate Grand Order go against a girl sitting on a toilet. Although in hindsight, you probably don't want to play these kind of cards. It's kind of weird if you want to try to get people into this card game. But I think that's like the great thing about Weiss that I really enjoy collecting. Like if you want to collect your favorite characters, even if you don't want to play the game, like, okay, I really like this Gaia, but I won't ever build a deck around it. I could, right? Because I really like the characters and I really like the franchises. If I wanted to collect, like, even if you're someone that likes to collect sealed products, like, okay, this Unlimited Blade Works booster box, for example, you could. And there's also those things like the sign cards that I showed you as well, too. There's something for everyone in this game, especially if you want to play the game as well, too. It's amazing. One thing to note down though, since there's so many people investing in the game, you could probably check out my other videos where I talk about people buying out the markets and pretty much grading everything. If you're looking to play the game, even if you don't want like the highest rarity cards, which are the signature cards, it's almost pretty much impossible with some of these sets because all the cards are sold out. And again, I'll use this guy as an example, right? If you want to run this 3-2 Laharo, I don't even know if this is meta, but just an example, if you wanted to run this level 3 Laharo, it's all sold out. So even if you wanted to have a playset of these where you want 4 of these in your deck, you can't even get 1 of them. And then we look at, okay, so if you do want the sign cards and you think, okay, then I'll just buy like a old trial deck or like a booster box, right? The problem with Weiss as well too is that they have set ratios as to how many sign cards are in one case. So a case would typically in the older booster boxes that are like this size rather than the newer ones, which are like the Japanese like flat boxes. Let's just say there's 16 boxes in one case and there's only 2 to 3 sign cards in each of them. So if you ever saw like these like loose cases being sold on TCG Player and eBay, most likely, I would say like 95% of the time, they're already mapped out. Mapped out meaning that there's 0 chance of you getting a signed card in that box because someone has already pulled it, and what they do is they sell the remainder of the boxes that they have because they already know they have the rarest and most expensive cards out of it. So as a new player and a new collector, it's just something that you have to watch out for and something to consider if you think like, okay, I'm going to play this game and I want to play like my favorite series. Like I want to play Disgaea, or I want to play like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example. Or like JoJo's is somewhat a little bit more recent, but you'll still see issues where some of these double rares are very expensive. And, you know, like the Seeker of Truth Journal being like $23. So typically, if you want to actually play the game, if you piece together a deck without even saying like a playset, right? So what a playset is that if you want to play a series like JoJo, for example, rather than, in order to have like the full set of all the cards, you want 4 of each type of rarity. That's a playset. Typically, normally when a new set comes out, it runs you between like $200 to $300. But for an older set like JoJo, someone might be charging you $600 or something like that, right? So you might think, okay, I'm just going to piece together a deck by myself. a deck, if you piece them together, depending on how old the set is, might still run you at a minimum of between like 80 to like around like 120 to like sometimes even up to like $200 or more. So I would say on the safe side, if you're building a deck and you don't want to go do like, oh, I want to buy a playset and you just piece it together yourself, it'll be between like 80 to $150. And here is when certain sets could be even more expensive than the 80 to $100 for a basic deck, right? So even the Secret Truth Journal that I showed you, that's already like $23 each of them. And that's like already, like if you're running 4 of them, that's like $100 just for this double rare alone. And then you have sets like Batman, for example, where people are speculating on it. So I don't even know if this is the level 3 that's playable, but let's just say it is. And because it, it works with the climax of the deck, right? So they're $40 each. So even if you run 4 copies of it, this alone is going to run you between like $120 to $150. And that's not even including what else is in your deck. So if you actually want to play a Batman Ninja deck, if let's say you buy a playset and someone's selling you the $500-$600 or whatever it is, if you want to piece a deck together without paying that price, it might still even run you like almost like $200-$300 just to build this deck alone. But the flip side of it is that since there's so many people investing in the game right now, everyone's just chasing money and they want all the number cards, sign cards, and all this other stuff, and they only care about what's the most expensive. It's a better time than ever to actually get into the game to play. And what do I mean by that, right? So when you look at a lot of these double rares, and typically that's where you'll look at when you're building your decks, when you're looking at the rares and the double rares, typically the double rares would be the most expensive parts of your deck, right? If you're not running max rarity and you're running sign cards in your deck, or like foils like super rares. And I'll go over examples as to when there's exceptions, but let's just say for some of the newer sets like Mushoku Tensei, where people are just chasing money, and it's a pretty good deck, and if you wanted to run 4 copies of these cards, and typically how Weiss works is that for most cards you're running a maximum of 4 copies of each of them, minus climaxes. You're running 8 in total, 4 of each type. You can't have more than 8, but let's just say if you need a playset which is 4 cards of one type, rather than paying like the other cards, like the older sets where $30-$40, where people are jacking them up because they're old or whatever it is, these are only around like $9 to $10, or sometimes even lower, because people are just trying to offload them because they just don't care. So people are constantly undercutting each other. So the core of your deck is going to be very, very cheap, especially when you look at these double rares, because once you go below that, you'll see that once you go past double rares for all like the regular common cards, uncommon cards, climaxes, they're like 10 cents, 8 cents, 20 cents. They're all less than $1. So that part of actually building your deck is actually very, very simple and cheap. There are exceptions to this, especially when I mention sets like Disgaea that are very old, where you'll have some cards where they're double rares, or even rares, for example, where this heroic Rin Archer is not even a foil card, it's just a regular rare. It's $70, and if you wanted to run 4 copies of these or 3 copies of these, even if you're willing to pay $70 for it, there's only one person selling it. So it's impossible for you even to acquire a playset unless you want to dump $200-$300 just for a playset of these. And it's something to consider when you're thinking about building your decks, where before you even go like, I want to play Fate Heaven's Feel, I want to play a Rin and Archer deck, maybe a card like this is a core of your deck and you need it. And you know what? Even if you're willing to pay for it, it might be completely out of stock, and the only way someone's willing to offload it to you and sell it to you is gonna be at like hundreds of dollars, and it's just something to be aware about. But this is pretty much just a quick intro to Weiss and collecting, and how pretty much building your deck and buying it works. What I would probably recommend is, if you're building a deck, I would look for a playset first, or try to piece it together on TCG Player. And if you're looking to actually play the game and you don't care about the series and you just want to get into the game, I would probably recommend just looking for some of the newer sets where you might be able to get something like a Heaven's Field playset, or even like Date Alive and all these other newer sets in the recent year or two, because people are just trying to get rid of them. You might be able to get these playsets for like, I don't know, between like $200 to $250 pretty much. And then if you're looking to collect and you want to buy SPs or whatever it is, just don't buy single boxes. You're pretty much guaranteed to get screwed over if you buy single boxes. I mean, it's a little bit cynical, but to be honest, the people that are selling single boxes most of the time is because they're selling dead boxes that they already pulled all the rarest cards, the signed cards out of them, and they're offloading these single boxes to try to make up for, the rest of the case. If you're looking to just chase, signed cards, if you can afford a case, buy the cases, pre-order the cases. If you can't afford to buy the case and some of the signed cards are older, then just buy the singles. Do not try to chase it out of these loose boxes that you see on like eBay, Mercari, or wherever it is. And if you're looking to buy some of these older signed cards, for example, one thing I also want to note down is you want to check out some of my other videos where I talk about how there's like just such a crazy market for investment on some of these signed cards. Like, I would probably recommend staying away from it until the market kind of dies down, or unless if you have the money to throw at it, then go ahead. But right now, the card prices are kind of ridiculous, and it's kind of become a collecting game for just people that can afford it. And I really don't believe these prices are that sustainable in general. But that's kind of my personal opinion on it. I could be wrong for all I know, right? But what I probably would recommend is just be very, very, very careful and don't buy these signed cards unless you truly enjoy these franchises and you're okay with going like, I'm buying a card like this for like $2,000. Do not buy at TCG player prices. Let's say you bought this card for $2,000 and you're okay with the fact that it might not actually be worth $2,000, then go for it. But overall, I think Weiss is a very, very good franchise where you can play pretty much any series of anything you want, and they just have so many franchises coming into it where there's something for everyone. If you like waifus, if you like, cool shonens or whatever it is, or even random things like Adventure Time and Mob Psycho coming into it, they have those things going for it. And even when it comes to me saying like, oh, it's one and done, and they do one print run and some of these franchises don't come back, that has been changing as well too, where they've been reprinting some stuff. Like they have Overlord being reprinted, they're reprinting like the Marvel sets in Japanese, and they have like the Overlord set being reprinted as well too. So there's, there are chances that some of these really, really older sets might come back. But overall, I would say if you're a player, if you're someone that's looking to collect, or you're just a mix of both, what I would recommend is like Weiss is a really, really good game, but there's a lot of research you're gonna have to do in regards to prices, which is kind of why I make all my videos about, the people that invest in Weiss and what to watch out for, right? When it comes to prices, especially if you're a new person, you're really excited in collecting all these cards, and, we all are, right? Like, okay, I really, really like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I want a journal, like, okay. If you see like some of these cards, like, well, I guess this is like $700 and that's what it is, right? No, because so you have to like do a lot of research into actually understanding why some of the prices are that they way that they are, and when some of them just don't make sense. Like this Narantia, for example, no one even bought it at like, $50 to $100 back then, and now it's like $500. And maybe some sucker's gonna come by and end up buying it for $500, and there's people that bought it for like 100 and then are reselling for 500. So you have to be very, very knowledgeable in this market, and you have to know price histories, especially once you start going into like the graded card territory, which is even more dangerous when it comes to these prices. Again, right, if you have the money to chuck at these things and you really, really don't care about how much money you spend, then all for it, right? But if you're someone that cares about every dollar that you spend and you don't want to get bamboozled, then check out some of my other videos about when it comes to Weiss prices and why it doesn't make sense. And hopefully it kind of gives you a little bit more insight into it. And then yeah, that's it. Aside from that, if you want to get into the game, what I recommend is go with some of the newer sets, just dabble in it, buy a couple of trial decks. So normally you would buy roughly around 2 trial decks of each set. And then with 2 trial decks, you should have like a playset of the trial decks to actually play out of it. And even if you don't want to invest in a trial deck, just get 1 trial deck of something, and you could have a lot of fun by just playing with 1 trial deck. And then you could probably get someone to teach you and play on like online on Discord or something like that, or even out of the Facebook groups, or someone local if you have a local scene. That's something to be really aware of as well too. When it comes to Weiss, I always talk about how niche Weiss is. So like in the Northeast, like in my area, there's no one that plays Weiss Schwarz. I think I'm trying to start a local scene, but they're like there's only like one other person that I know that plays near me. And that's something to be aware about. There's options to play online, but it's since it's such a niche game, like before you like spend a lot of money on like building a deck and all these other things, you have to realize like, even like if you're collecting or investing in it, you have to realize there's not a lot of people that really, really play this game depending on where you live. I know there's a lot of people on the West Coast in California that plays Weiss, but overall on the East Coast, it seems pretty sparse and far in between. With the exceptions of like certain areas like play groups. I know like in Pittsburgh there's some people as well too, but it's just something to be aware about. But I thank you for watching the video, and I hope this gives you like a little bit more insight as to Weiss as a card game, and I'll try to do more videos like this in the future. Thank you again. Have a great day.